Are you ready for the next speech analysis? Because now we have the second placed contestant of the World Championship of Public Speaking 2024. It's Hannah Cheng. And Hannah was infectiously enthusiastic in her speech. And what I loved about Hannah looking at her speak is I could see that this was someone who was like, I'm making the most of this opportunity. I'm here, I'm at the World Finals, I'm gonna have fun, I'm gonna put my heart and soul into this, and I'm gonna do my best and leave everything on the stage. And clearly that resonated really well with the audience and pretty well with the judges as well. Now, speaking of the judges, in these analyses videos, I am not commenting on the ranking and the judging. I'm not saying this speaker should have been higher or this speaker should have been a different position, because the only people who can possibly decide that were the judges on the day. And the decision has already been made. If you ask 100 Toastmasters who they thought the top 3 were, you're going to get almost 100 different answers, I imagine. So we're not commenting on the ranking because it's not useful. We can't learn from arguing and debating about the ranking because everyone has their own opinions, their own perspective of what they would personally be looking for as a judge. What instead we're trying to do is looking at the speeches that finished in those positions and going, okay, fantastic. What can we learn from those speeches? And that's what we're going to look at with Hannah's speech today. Now, another piece of housekeeping, I'm going to be playing footage from Hannah's speech. If you haven't seen the speech already, I'm sure you have. It'd be strange to come here first, but in case you haven't, I've put the link to the speech in the video description below, and I'm using the footage from Toastmasters International's filming of the speech. I do not claim the rights or the ownership to this footage. The footage belongs to Toastmasters International, and the use of this footage is for informational and educational purposes only. I'm commenting this as a fellow competitor in the speech contest, a big speech nerd, and I just want to look at these speeches and find out, well, hey, what can I learn as a competitor and a speaker from these speeches? And also, what can you learn as a possible competitor and as a speaker from these speeches? So let's launch in to look at Are You Ready? By Hannah Cheng.
Oh, as to the question, are you ready? The answer is, of course, not.
Right from that first line, Hannah is starting with humour. And I think the way that she executes this is by having that contrast of body language and voice. She comes on very energetic. Are you ready? Of course not. So we've got this very animated display of gestures, her posture. She looks like a spring calling up. Are you ready? Of course. And it looks like she's going in a positive direction, but then she totally switches, becomes uncoiled. There's the facial expression, the roll to the side, not. It's a lovely contrast. It gets a laugh from the audience straight off. And if you can make the audience laugh early on, you're doing a great job of building that likability and rapport with them going into the rest of your speech.
I traveled to Europe for the first time. It is where water is more expensive than wine, where people would kiss you on the cheek, where pineapples on pizzas are illegal. Mamma mia. So interesting.
Again, we've got some really good use of humour here. And I actually thought Hannah was a bit unlucky with this build-up. I actually think what she's saying is funnier than the reaction that the audience are getting. And I guess there's a little bit of that Eurocentric aspect to this humour. You can kind of hear the laughs in the audience. And those laughs are probably coming from the members of the audience who have an experience and understanding of Europe. They're either Europeans themselves or they've traveled there quite frequently. Like, what Hannah's saying there, I think she's building up really well, and I actually think it's pretty funny, but she doesn't quite get the reaction that sort of build-up deserves. Which is a shame, because she's lined up these 3 jokes one after the other. Is exactly what you want to do with humour. It's a technique called layering. So humour isn't just about the one-liner. Really well-crafted humour is about building different layers on top of each other. And I thought Hannah did a great job of that, and perhaps just a little bit unfortunate that they didn't quite have as strong a reaction as it could have possibly been. Obviously, this is a worldwide convention. It's being held in the US, in North America. So perhaps that joke would have landed a bit more if the audience had been slightly more Eurocentric. It's just one of those things. Sometimes you build up layers of humor and they don't quite get the reaction you wanted. And then equally, as we looked at when I was analysing the third place position, I actually think that Angeli got an unexpected laugh. So sometimes you get unexpected laughs you hadn't planned for, and sometimes you don't get the laugh that you had expected.
I want to live abroad. And then my mom said, living abroad? Honey, you don't even know how to cook. Why don't you finish your law degree first? Yeah, Mom. Maybe it's too early. After 5 years, I finished my law degree. I got my lawyer's license. I want to live abroad. Then my sister said, exactly, Hannah, you just got your lawyer's license. You should start working first. And you still don't know how to cook. Well, makes sense. After 5 more years, I've worked hard for 5 years. I want to live abroad. And then my inner voice said, Hannah, oh, Hannah, you spent 10 years building your career in Hong Kong. Now you want to give it up? You crazy?
So I rolled the footage for quite a bit there just to demonstrate all of what we're looking at here. Hannah at this point, she uses anchoring and the rule of 3 for telling her story. She has these 3 time points, and the 3 time points are anchored on different parts of the stage. What we can see there is a timeline. So many people in the world, not everyone in the world, but many people, many cultures see time in a linear way. They see it as moving from left to right. So past, present, future, see it moving along the line. And you can see that Hannah starts on her right, the audience's left, for the first time point. She moves along the timeline 5 years. She moves along the timeline another 5 years. So we're starting to see this spatial transition to represent the passing of time. And then at each of these points, the same thing happens. There's a voice that tells her no. First time, it's her mum's voice. Second time, it's her sister's voice. Third time, it's her own voice. So this is a really well-crafted piece of stagecraft and storytelling here. And I know it's quite a long clip to look at, but it's it's a long clip running in real time. But what you're seeing there is that was about 60 seconds or so. Hannah has been able to give us a 10-year journey in 60 seconds. And one of the most difficult things to do when you're telling a story on stage, and especially a Toastmasters speech where it has to be 7 minutes 30, anything longer than that you get disqualified. Think about, well, how do I convey a long period of time and a long narrative arc in as short a time as possible? And what Hannah's been able to do there is by using some anchoring to show us, okay, this was a long process, and then using the rule of 3 to demonstrate, well, what was the key theme running throughout this? Well, the key theme running throughout all of these 10 years were the voices that were telling her no. Different voices, but it was always a voice telling her no. So a combination of techniques to enable her to condense her story and fit it into this speech.
Have you ever wanted to do something, but the voices around you, even the voices inside you, told you that you're not ready?
What Hannah is doing here now, she's spent, as I said, maybe about a minute of this speech telling her story. Now what she's doing is going, well, how can I relate my story to the audience's story? And this is where she comes in with the question. So she set up her story. She set up the theme of the story, which is voices saying no. And now what she's doing is she's hitting the ball across the court, and it's now on the audience's side of the court, and now they're thinking about, well, have I had that type of experience where there's been voices telling me no? Maybe it's been external voices, or maybe it's been internal voices. This is so key whenever we're telling a personal story. When you're telling a personal story, of course, it involves you, but it's actually not about you. The story is about the audience seeing themselves in your narrative. And all you're doing by setting up your story, demonstrating your journey, is you're allowing the audience to think about themselves and think about their lives in a way that they possibly haven't done before. And that's why this question is so important, is to really underline that and go, okay, is this a narrative that you recognize? And if it is, what are you going to do about it?
I saw sparkles of passion, and I thought, we just met. It's too fast. I'm not ready. And he asked, Hannah.
I just wanted to look at that little part there. There was many examples of this in Hannah's speech, but I think Hannah has such this positive, infectious smile, and there's also a lot of energy in her gestures. And I think that smile and her gestures, it's really pushing the energy out into the audience, and it's infecting the audience with the energy, and it's bringing the audience's energy up. She's really expressive in the way that she communicates emotion, a lot of it through her face, which is actually quite a difficult skill to execute for many speakers, and also through her body as well. And the way that she's doing it, it doesn't look like she's just drank 3 Red Bulls before coming up on stage and be like, hey guys, I'm expressive and energetic. It doesn't look frantic. It just looks strong and energetic. It's a really nice skill that she has, and I'd say it's probably her USP of what sets her apart as a speaker. What is her strength is she's got this energy, she's got this infectiousness, she's really expressive in lots of different emotions. She's expressing a lot of positive emotion in this speech, but you also see some of that expression coming through strong for other emotions as well. I would say that this is probably the highlight of the speech for me. It isn't necessarily any particular line that Hannah says, it's more about how she delivers and expresses her lines on stage.
What? Oscar, I don't know how to cook.
I can really relate to this line. I remember when I first started going to Toastmasters, and I was telling my friends, I can't come out on Wednesday, I've got my Toastmasters meeting. And they would look at me and they'd go, Toastmasters? Is that like a cookery class? So when Hannah said this line, I really felt that affinity with her in the moment. And of course, you then have to explain, no, it's toast as in giving a toast. Yeah, it makes sense. But when you think of the word toast, the first insinuation, the first meaning you attach to that word is not let's raise a glass, it's putting butter on the bread. So I love that she was able to reveal the humor in that situation. That's what great humor is. Great humor isn't inventing something that isn't there. Humor is about revealing something that's there. So I know that experience happened with her. I know that experience happened with me. And I'm sure that experience has happened for other Toastmasters who are in that room as well. And that's why it's getting a big laugh. It's not getting a big laugh because it's like, I didn't know that humor existed. It's getting a big laugh because it's, I know that humor exists and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Hannah, would you join the speech contest? I'm not ready, okay?
I was talking about that expressiveness earlier. What Hannah does there for facial expressions, those facial expressions really make the humor in that situation. If she just went, speech contest, I'm not ready, it wouldn't get the laugh like that. But she's so good at the really kind of intense expression of the... And she doesn't have to say anything in that moment. It's just the non-verbals that are selling that humor. It's a really strong skill to be able to have that expressiveness coming through the face. A lot of the time speakers on stage, even experienced speakers, the faces get a little bit frozen and there isn't so much emotion coming through them. This is not an issue for Hannah at all. And it demonstrates that humor isn't just about like, oh, I need to come up with these clever, witty lines. There's lots of different ways to convey humor. And sometimes the thing that does the biggest laugh is doing nothing at all.
So I joined the contest, and I regretted it. I had no idea what to say. I felt lost. I wanted to run away from this. I didn't feel ready.
I hope you're able to see with the camera angle that changed there. What Hannah does to convey the fear in the situation, she uses another bit of stagecraft by backing away on the stage. Because when we're scared of something, we retreat from it, don't we? And again, this is thinking about how we convey emotion through more than just the words that we say. We're looking at, well, how do we show something rather than tell something? Because Hannah could just say, I entered the contest and I was really scared. But when you tell someone something, it doesn't have that same impression, that same effect. Whereas when you show someone something, when all of what you're doing aligns with the words that you're saying, that makes it more impactful and that makes it connect that much deeper. So this is another technique that you can use. You've got gestures, you've got facial expressions, you've also got your movement on stage. So it's a really nice bit of stagecraft backing away to demonstrate fear.
But I knew I would never be ready. So I started. And here I am.
I love that line. It's this little bit of cheeky confidence from Hannah. And I think there's an essence of that comes through in her speech, that there's a humility to her. And there's also this kind of steel underneath her as well. And that line, I think, it was really cute. I loved it. I love that she's coming up in there, talking about how she felt she wasn't ready, felt that she had that fear, but then also coming up and delivering a line with confidence and conviction at the same time. It was a really nice moment. Again, really demonstrating the relatability, the likability, the rapport there. And I think that's something that Hannah has done so well through this speech, is being able to balance strength and vulnerability, being able to balance humility and wisdom. And ultimately, I think that's what's resulted in her high placing, is being able to form that relationship and that rapport with the audience. Hannah's speech was all about feeling that she wasn't ready. And maybe you're feeling like you're not ready either. You've got a speech coming up, or you're wanting to embark on a speaking journey, and you're thinking, I don't know if I've got all the skills that I need for this. I don't know if I understand the craft of how to do this enough. If you're feeling like that, don't worry. This is where having a coach can help you. And it's a service that I offer, helping people with their public speaking. So if you're feeling like you're not ready and would like someone to help you get into that state of readiness, then I could be the right coach for you. If you send me a message on LinkedIn, I've got a link to my LinkedIn in the video description below. If you tell me a little bit about what you're speaking on, what your journey is, what are some of the challenges that you're having, and what are some of the goals that you're aiming for, then we can look at the different coaching options and find an option that's right for you. Now, let's look at the rest of Hannah's speech and think about what are some ideas for improvement that she could have put into this speech. Before we go ahead and look at some ideas for improvement for Hannah's speech, I'm going to have a few caveats to begin with. If you've watched some of my other speech analysis videos, you'll notice that I get very nitpicky and precise, and I'll break down blow by blow of a speech what I think someone has maybe done wrong, or what I think they missed out, what they could have changed, what they could have improved. That's not quite the approach that I'm going to be taking in this particular speech analysis, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The first reason is that for my other speech analysis, I'm often looking at big global figures, big historical figures, world leaders, celebrities. And when we're talking about Toastmasters speech contests, Toastmasters are everyday people. And I want to be respectful and sensitive to that. So I'm not going to get all nitpicky. I don't want them to think, oh, some stranger on the internet has like torn my speech apart. So I'm not taking as nitpicky an approach as I normally would with these speech analyses. The second reason that I've got a different approach is that when you get to this stage, you have worked on your speech so much. There's 2 speeches that you have to deliver, and one of those speeches will be where you started in the very first round of the contest. And you might have worked on that speech for 6, 9, 12 months. And then for your second speech, you've probably been working on it for at least 3 months once you found out you were going to the World Semi-Finals. But the most advanced competitors, folks who've been in this before, they've been preparing that second speech well in advance as well. So we're talking about over a year of effort and work that are going into these speeches coming up onto this final stage. And after you've gotten to that point and you've delivered the speech, you really have to step back and take a break from that speech. And the last thing you want to hear is more feedback on that speech. You've done so much work. I'm sure Hannah had a coach for this speech. I actually suspect I might know who her coach was based on some of her stylistic methods and techniques that were coming through. I suspect Hannah probably had a coach, was definitely getting test feedback from audiences. And after a while, you just want to go, right, I'm parking that speech and I don't want to think about it for a while. So that's the second reason why I'm not offering a ton of feedback and ideas on the speech. And the third reason is that I'm a fellow competitor in this contest, and not because I don't want to give other speakers ideas on how to improve their speeches. I'm someone who looks up to the folks who get to these world semis and the world finals. It's a stage that I've never been to, and Hannah has gotten further in this contest than I have. So I want to be respectful and mindful of that fact that I'm not looking at Hannah's speech or any of the finalist speeches and going, oh, I think the speech is rubbish and I can do better. That's not the impression that I'm giving across at all. I'm looking at these speeches as a fellow competitor and also as an admirer of these speeches as well. And I want to learn and develop by watching these speeches, and I want you to learn and develop from watching these speeches as well. So with that in mind, I'm taking more of a traditional Toastmasters approach to evaluating this particular speech. For those of you who are familiar with Toastmasters, you'll know that a speech evaluation given at a regular meeting is normally 2 to 3 minutes long. And what I normally do in these evaluations is I'll offer one suggestion for content, one suggestion for delivery. And the key word is suggestion. These are ideas that the speaker can take away, and it's not something that you have to adopt or employ. You never have to take on any feedback that you get. But if you give the speaker an idea, they can do something with it. They can go, oh yeah, actually, let me think about how I can work that in. Or actually, I don't think that's what I'm looking to do with the speech. So that's what I'm going to do with Hannah's speech here, is I'm going to look at an idea for improving the content, an idea for improving the delivery. And any speaker can take it or leave it. And you might disagree with the ideas for improvement that I give. And that's all right, because speaking has a subjectivity and an art form to it. And we each have that different perspective on speeches. And this is just my perspective and my ideas for this speech. So with those caveats covered, let's now look at what's a content idea and what's a delivery idea for Hannah's speech.
You're right. I will never be ready. Just start. You're so right. Thank you so much, Mr. Tong. I quit. I'm moving abroad.
In terms of looking at this speech, we talked about this earlier in the analysis of this journey that Hannah was on and hearing the voices telling her no. And when I was listening to this story, I could predict where it was going. I was like, okay, she's going to be taking these journeys. She's going to hear this no all the time. She's in her career. She's stuck on a career path. And at some point, she's going to decide this isn't the journey that I want to be on, and I'm going to quit and follow my dreams. So when this part of the speech came, I was expecting it to happen. And I think what Hannah could do to really spice up this story is not that it's a bad thing to tell a story about realizing you're on the wrong path and deciding you're going to follow your dreams or you're going to change paths. Like, that's a common narrative and it's something that people can relate to. But think about how can you present that in a more novel way, something that subverts expectations. Because I was starting to think, okay, right, she's going to be in this job, she's going to go years and years, and then she'd go, right, okay, I'm leaving. What I think Hannah could have done is played with that expectation, played with that prediction that I was making. And when she's there with her boss and she gets the offer for partnership, she can go, wow, yeah, I'll never be ready. Okay, I'm going to be a partner. Because if I'm a partner, that means I'm going to have all the money to travel the world. And at that point in the story, I would have gone, oh, okay. I thought she was going to quit her job at some time, but maybe this is going in a different direction. Maybe this speech is about, well, actually, sometimes the right thing to do is to stay in your job, is to stay on that path, because that can facilitate following your dream and going elsewhere. And then she could have played with that and gone, that's what I wanted to say. But instead, I said, I quit. So she can still get to that same conclusion, because that's what in reality happened, right? So she's not going to lie and say that something didn't happen the way that it did. But I think if she just played with that a little bit more, it would have interrupted that predictiveness in my head. As I was listening to this story, I was starting to just come out of the story a little bit and go, okay, right, we're going to get to the point where she quits her job and let's see what happens after that. Whereas if she brought in that element of subverting that expectation, it would have drawn my attention right back in. I would have gone, oh, okay, this is unexpected. This is a plot twist. Let's see where it goes. So whenever you're telling a story which is a common story, a common narrative, it's okay to tell that story because that commonality will help you connect with the audience. But think about what are little details, what are little plot twists that you can put in that keep the audience on their toes and they don't know what's going to happen next.
And then my mom said, living abroad? Honey, you don't even know how to cook. Why don't you...
One of the strengths that I talked about in Hannah's speech is she's got this positive, energetic, expressive nature. And I think in terms of a delivery suggestion, I think there's an opportunity to bring in some emotional contrast in this speech. And I think where she can do this is these three voices that she has. She's got her mum's voice, her sister's voice, and then the inner critic as well. And I think if she could personalize these characters a lot more. So she's maybe got this mum who's kind of very stern and overbearing, and there's that particular character that comes through. And then maybe there's this sister who's like a little bit more flatter and resigned, and then this inner critic who's like mean and nasty. You could then have these different, I hate to use the term negative emotions because emotions aren't negative, but having these contrasting emotions where she's got this high energy positivity and then being able to demonstrate these different emotions, adding different qualities to these voices that are holding her back, would then provide an emotional contrast in the speech and would be taken on a little bit more or even more of an emotional journey than what we are already. So I think there's an element of delivery that she could have brought in there of bringing more to these characters' voices at each of these stages. And that would have helped mix it up from this very high energy positivity that she's demonstrating through most of her speech. But it's really that note of that high energy positivity that I think ultimately makes this speech and makes Hannah's speech. And listening to her story, it sounds like this is maybe not her first time ever competing, but this is maybe her first big journey in the international speech contest. And it was really nice to sort of hear that journey being told in real time. It was a little bit of a meta speech of here I am in this contest and I'm demonstrating what it is about competing that is such a powerful thing for ourselves growing as individuals, but also in terms of how we share with our audience as well. And if this is Hannah's first big journey in the international speech contest, I'm sure it's not going to be her last big journey in the International Speech Contest. She's got this great energy. She builds this great connection with the audience. She finished second on this occasion, and who knows, maybe we're going to see her again on the stage aiming for that next step up.